Ever heard of Ricardo Gold? Once, his name was a legend in the courtroom. A defense attorney with a silver tongue and a mind like a steel trap, he was the guy you called when the walls were closing in. He could find a loophole in a solid brick wall. But brilliance often walks a tightrope, and Ricardo's fell. Disbarred, disgraced, and drowning in debt, the man who once commanded million-dollar retainers was now scrounging for scraps. The fall from grace wasn't just steep. It was a bottomless abyss. And at the bottom of that abyss, a hand reached out. It wasn't a hand offering salvation. It was a hand offering a deal with the devil. This offer came from the shadowy upper echelons of the Sombra Cartel, a criminal organization known more for its brutality than its business acumen. They weren't looking for a lawyer to defend them in court. They were looking for a strategist, a ghost in their machine, someone to legitimize their operations and multiply their profits. The offer was obscene, a figure with so many zeros it seemed unreal. For Ricardo, a man stripped of his pride and his profession, it was a lifeline he couldn't refuse. He knew the cost. He knew he'd be trading his soul for a seat at their table. But with his back against the wall, his soul felt like a small price to pay for a second chance, no matter how tainted. He took the deal. Overnight, Ricardo Gold vanished from the world he knew. In his place emerged El Mago, the magician, the cartel's invisible architect. He didn't just advise them, he revolutionized them. Applying his legal and corporate structuring genius, Ricardo transformed the Sombra Cartel from a clumsy band of thugs into a sophisticated, multinational enterprise. He created a labyrinth of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and seemingly legitimate businesses that laundered money with breathtaking efficiency. He streamlined their logistics, using corporate supply chain models to move their product across borders with minimal risk. The cartel's profits didn't just grow. They exploded, multiplying tenfold in a matter of months. They expanded their territory, swallowing smaller rivals whole, not just with bullets, but with hostile takeovers orchestrated by their legal phantom. Ricardo's life transformed as well. The rundown apartment was replaced by a sprawling villa hidden in the mountains, a gilded cage with an infinity pool overlooking a valley of shadows. He wore bespoke suits, drove exotic cars, and had anything money could buy. He was powerful again, respected, even feared. But this new life was a phantom limb, an echo of what he'd lost. The luxury was hollow, a constant reminder of the blood that paid for it. Every laugh at a lavish party was punctuated by the silent scream of paranoia. Every clinking champagne glass sounded like the cocking of a gun. He was surrounded by opulence, but he was utterly alone. A prisoner of the very empire he had built. He saw the brutality firsthand, the casual violence that underpinned his comfortable existence. He was a ghost, and ghosts don't have friends. They only have secrets and the constant fear of being exposed. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in a sterile government office, DEA agent Pedro Gomez was staring at a map. For months, he'd been tracking the unprecedented surge of the Sombra Cartel. It defied all logic. Cartels grew, sure, but not like this. This wasn't just growth. It was a paradigm shift. They were moving with a surgical precision he'd never seen, their financial footprint almost impossible to trace. Gomez was a different breed of agent. He wasn't just about kicking down doors. He was a bloodhound for data. A man who understood that modern empires, legal or not, are built on information and strategy. He knew this wasn't just the work of the cartel's hot-headed leader, a man known for his brawn, not his brain. There was someone else, a new player, a ghost in the machine. A whisper in the intelligence community began to circulate, a name from a past life, Ricardo Gold. Gomez started digging, pulling on the threads of a disgraced lawyer who had simply vanished. The scent was faint, but for a hunter like Gomez, it was all he needed. The two master strategists, one on the side of the law and one deep in its shadow, were now on a collision course. The game had changed. Agent Gomez, armed with a growing mountain of data and a single-minded focus, was no longer just chasing the cartel. He was hunting El Mago. His investigation moved from the streets to the banks, from informants to international financial records. He and his team began to unravel the complex web of shell companies Ricardo had so brilliantly woven. One by one, assets were frozen. Shipments were intercepted with uncanny accuracy. Key front businesses were raided. The once impenetrable fortress Ricardo had built was starting to show cracks. The flow of money, the lifeblood of the cartel, began to slow to a trickle. Inside the cartel's inner circle, paranoia festered like a disease. The leaders, men who solved problems with bullets, couldn't comprehend how the DEA had suddenly gotten so smart. Their conclusion was simple and brutal. There was a rat. A traitor was feeding information to the feds. Ricardo felt the vice tighten from both sides. The cartel's leaders, once his patrons, now looked at him with suspicion. His genius was now a liability. Was he too smart? Could he be the one orchestrating this from the inside, playing a double game to save his own skin? Their questions became more pointed, their smiles colder. The veiled threats were no longer veiled. He knew his time was running out. One mistake, one slip-up, and his gilded cage would become his tomb. At the same time, Gomez was closing in. Through back channels, the DEA let it be known they knew who El Mago was. They didn't just want the cartel, they wanted the architect. They offered a way out, a chance to testify, to enter witness protection. But could he trust them? And even if he could, how could he possibly escape the cartel's ever-watchful eyes? He was trapped, checkmated. The brilliant strategist had run out of moves, cornered by the ruthless killers he had enriched and the relentless lawman who had outmaneuvered him. Ricardo had to make a final, desperate play. It was a choice between a quick death at the hands of the cartel or a living death as a ghost in the government system. His survival now depended on one last gamble, the most important move of his life. The final act was a symphony of chaos. Ricardo, using the last dregs of his strategic genius, decided to play both sides against the middle. He orchestrated a massive data dump, a digital bombshell designed to cripple the cartel's entire global network, and timed it to coincide with a high-level meeting of the cartel leadership. It was his parting gift to Gomez, a roadmap to dismantling the entire Sombra organization. At the same time, he used the ensuing chaos as cover for his own escape, a desperate run for a border he had helped make so porous. But the cartel wasn't so easily fooled. They had anticipated his betrayal. The escape route he thought was secret was a trap. As Gomez's DEA teams stormed the cartel's strongholds, seizing leaders and evidence thanks to Ricardo's data, another team was closing in on Ricardo himself. Not agents, but sicarios, the cartel's deadliest enforcers. The end came not in a blaze of glory, but in a dusty, forgotten border town. There was no dramatic shootout, no final stand. Just the cold, quiet justice of the underworld. The men he had made rich cornered him in a desolate alley. There were no negotiations, no last words. They didn't want answers, they wanted to make an example. The price for his betrayal was paid in full, a brutal and anonymous end for the man who once held the world in the palm of his hand. When the authorities found him, El Mago was gone. All that was left was the ghost of Ricardo Gold. In the aftermath, the Sombra cartel crumbled. Agent Gomez became a hero, the man who took down an empire. But for him, the victory was bittersweet. He had hunted a phantom, and in the end, that's all he found. Ricardo's story became a cautionary tale whispered in the halls of justice and the back alleys of crime. He had gained the world, the money, the power, the illusion of a second chance. But in accepting that deal, in choosing to remain silent in the face of evil for his own gain, he had made a fatal miscalculation. The price of his complicity wasn't just his freedom or his life. The ultimate price he paid was his own soul, lost long before the final bullet was ever fired. Thank you so much for watching. If this story captivated you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the shadows. Let us know in the comments what you think about Ricardo's choices. We'll see you in the next one.